boys and girls. I'm back for our Big Kids Angel Tree. Haven't I been terrible? I have missed so much. And I really wanted to get it read before Christmas or the New Year, but I didn't. I was busy, and I know you were too. So I suppose we can all forgive ourselves, right? We are going to read a little bit of this today. We are on chapter 17, and it's 11 days until Christmas. Cammie picked at the grilled cheese on the plate in front of her, if you could call it that. She tried to make lunch, but ended up with a charred crisp of a sandwich. She could hear her grandmother in the other room chatting on the phone with her aunt about Willa's latest accomplishments. Worst of all, Cammie couldn't stop thinking about what had happened with Lucy, and she had no idea how to apologize without making Lucy feel even worse. Do you remember what happened? They went to the store to get some yarn for Cammie's grandma, and Lucy, who's blind and didn't have her dog, couldn't see, and she knocked over a bunch of stuff and broke it. Remember? And she was feeling all sad. And now Lucy, Max, and Joe still have their wishes coming true. A moment later, her grandmother popped her head in. "I need to pick up a few things at the grocery," Grandma said. "Come along and keep me company." The last thing Cammie felt like doing was heading out to the crowded market, but she knew her grandmother needed help with the heavy bags of food. Maybe she could finally get something right this weekend. So she headed downstairs, put on her boots, and got into her grandmother's ancient Honda. I have a Honda. That's cool. "You're awfully quiet," her grandmother said as she backed the car down their driveway. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Cammie said. "I just have a lot of homework." "Still taking that break from the violin?" her grandmother asked. Cammie's chest tightened. Yeah, she said. She never lied to her grandmother, and you could maybe argue that this wasn't a complete lie. Still, it was stretching the truth till it felt like something else entirely. But Cammie wanted to tell her grandmother the big change she had made when it actually was worth talking about, when she had used her new free time to do something truly Willa-worthy. And so, that had not happened yet. Her grandmother glanced at her for a moment, and Cammie steeled herself for more questions, but Grandma stayed quiet. She couldn't have believed it was possible, but now Cammie felt even worse. Her grandmother had said nothing about missing hearing her play, or how Cammie needed to prepare for the Christmas gala. It was almost as though she were glad Cammie wasn't playing, which shouldn't have been a surprise considering the conservative conversation she had both with Willa's mom and still hit Cammie like a sharp jab at the soft part of her belly. The grocery store was crowded, and the lights felt harsh. Cammie steered the cart as her grandma filled it up with pasta, juice, and bread. There was a long line at the meat counter, and Cammie leaned on the cart as her grandmother chatted with a church friend waiting in front of them. But then she saw something that made her stand upright. Mrs. Von Wolf, the tiny old lady huffing as she pushed a cart filled to the brim with food. She spotted her. Behind her came her husband, barely an inch taller, and pushing a cart piled even higher, if that was possible. What are they doing with all that food? There was no way they were going to eat all that food. They had to be buying it for someone else, possibly someone who had made a wish on the angel tree. Cammie crept up behind them to see what was in their carts. Both were piled high with fruity frosted crunch cereal, chocolate granola bars, boxes of macaroni and cheese, and several big bottles of fruit punch. All food a 10-year-old would like, not an elderly couple. "So we'll just box this up and get it to the Naylor's house when Ed Pink delivers their tree at 7, Mr. Van Wolf was saying, running a hand through his sparse white hair. The Naylors lived on the edge of town, and Mr. Naylor had been out of work for almost a year. Cammy knew the only way they could afford Christmas for their 3 young kids was with a little help from the angel tree. Perfect, his wife said. We just need to grab some staples for the parents, and I think we're there. We're all set. And you said Alma Sanchez is taking care of the gifts? Mr. Van Wolf asked as they headed down the aisle. Cammy wasn't tired or low anymore. There was a clue, and a fantastic one at that. The Van Wolfs were helping out with an important wish, and they were obviously the ones organizing it. After all, how else could they know that Mr. Pink was delivering the tree and Alma Sanchez was taking care of the gifts? Cammy couldn't wait to call Joe, Lucy, and Max the second she got home and tell them they had new prime candidates for GB, the great benefactor. Chapter 18, 11 Days Until Christmas. Max was walking home from a hockey game when Cammy called, giving him the lowdown on her trip to Mrs. Sanchez and her intel on the Van Wolfs. The note is a great clue, Max said, feeling pumped up by the game and now the new lead on GB. And that was some good spying on the Van Wolfs. The Van Wolfs were definitely on top of the list, Cammy said, ignoring his spy comment. Mrs. Van Wolf could easily be the person who writes out all the notes. I was thinking we should go talk to them tomorrow after school. Sounds good, Max said. I'll be there. His skate bag was starting to slide off his shoulders, so he hitched it up. Great, Cammy said. Now I just have to figure out how to tell Joe. I don't have his phone number. Max sighed. It was time to hear Cammy say, I told you so. I'll tell Joe, Max said. Wait, what? Cammy asked. Her shock like an electric current ran through the phone. I wouldn't go so far as to say you were right, but he's not a bad guy, Max said. He held the phone away from his ears so they wouldn't have to hear Cammy shout, I told you so. When he brought it back a moment later, she was still talking. So I was right, wasn't I? And it turns out my idea for you guys to go to the barristers was a good one, wasn't it? I knew it. She paused. What happened there anyway? Did you find anything? Max sobered as he told Cammy about the shrine. He had just come into the main square and seeing the angel tree, so filled with hope, somehow made the sad barrister house feel even more awful. Maybe we can do something for them, Cammy said. Max could probably practically hear the wheels in her head spinning away on a new project. Yeah, we could, he said, but I still wonder if they're GB. After all, they lost their son. They decided to do something good like he did. But I still wonder if they're GB. Maybe after they lost their son, they decided to do something good like he did, and they started the angel tree. I know the Van Wolfs look like they're prime suspects, but I don't think we can eliminate the barristers. They're not suspects, Cammy said with an eye roll. But you're right that we should at least still consider them. So go tell your new best friend Joe that we're meeting up to check on the Van Wolfs tomorrow. After signing off, Max shoved his phone in his pocket. He realized he actually didn't have Joe's number, but he remembered that Joe had mentioned that living over the Lost Sock laundromat, and that was only a few blocks away. So Max figured he'd just drop by. He stopped on the corner of Montgomery and Main while Mr. Pink drove by, honking and waving as he went. As Max waved back, he noticed a bunch of new basketball supplies piled in the back of Mr. Pink's pickup truck. It was probably another angel tree wish. The Von Wolfs and the barristers were definitely top suspects, but Mr. Pink was still in the race. The Lost Sock laundromat had a lone dryer spinning on the back wall when Max walked in and began searching for a way to get to the second floor. He finally found it outside a small door on the side of the building and headed up the narrow staircase, noticing that the steps were coated with dust and the paint on the walls was chipped. The excitement he felt at Cammie's news began to curdle into something that felt more like worry as he knocked on the door. A few minutes later, he heard footsteps, and then Joe opened the door. "Hey," Joe said, smiling when he realized it was Max. "I think this is the very first time anyone knocked on the door since I moved here. Come on in." Max walked into the apartment. "We're going to investigate the Von Wolfs tomorrow," he said. His voice trailed off as he looked around at the place where his friend lived. There was a saggy leather sofa, an ancient Barclay lounger, and a rickety table off to one side. The carpet was stained. The walls were bare, and the only thing that looked truly clean was the large television standing on a flimsy black plastic stand. As he took it all in, Max noticed a mass under the table, and for a moment thought it was some kind of body bag. But then reality checked in and he realized it was a sleeping bag. "You camp out?" he asked. Joe cleared his throat. "My uncle doesn't have another bedroom, so I sleep in here." "But why can't you sleep on the sofa?" Max asked. He had a vague sense that he was being rude, but his shock at seeing how Joe lived had robbed him of his manners. "My uncle watches TV pretty late sometimes," Joe said quietly. "It's easier to block it out and get to sleep if I'm over here." "That's just wrong," Max blurted out. "It's fine," Joe said. "Can I get you anything to drink? I was going to make some cocoa." "Sure," Max said, still not able to understand why Joe had to sleep under a table. That doesn't seem right. He followed his friend into the kitchen, where there was a half-size fridge and some shelves that were empty save for a few packs of ramen, some cans of soup, and a big box of saltines. A microwave took up most of the scratched counter, and when he looked around, Max noticed a big patch of mold on one wall. He wouldn't have believed it possible, but he had actually stumbled into a place that made his family's current apartment seem like a palace. Max looked at his friend, who was carefully scrubbing out 2 mugs, and something twisted in his chest. "I can't believe this is where you live," he said. Joe's shoulders stiffened, but when he turned to face Max, he didn't look angry or sad or anything that Max knew he would be feeling if he stood in Joe's shoes. "Leon was the only one who could take me in while my mom served," he said simply. "And dealing with this is nothing compared to what she's dealing with over there." Max had always thought of himself as rough, able to laugh off accidental hits in football or fight hard for the puck in hockey. He'd broken his leg, gotten stitches twice, and hadn't cried when the neighbor's dog bit him so deep he had to go to the hospital. But standing next to Joe in his quiet pride, Max felt like a complete cream puff, a pampered, spoiled child who had always been taken care of no matter what. He wanted to tell Joe that what he was doing was pretty incredible, that if he were in Joe's shoes, he'd never handled it this well. But words like that didn't come easily from Max. Instead, he slapped Joe on the back and said, "So, where's the cocoa?" And Joe smiled as he dried off the mugs and began to prepare their drinks. That is so sad. See, we always think that we have it so bad because we don't have this or we don't get that, or mommies and daddies can't buy us this and can't buy us that. And there's so many people that have so much less than we do. You should just be grateful for our home and our mommies and our daddies and our grandmas and grandpas and our yayas and our papas and our pets and our friends and our school. That's all we need. We just need each other. That's what's so good about it. Let's see if we've got time for one more. Oh, I think that we'll stop now. I love you guys. And I'll be back for chapter 19 soon.